guys, welcome back to Spirit Chill. Today is a beautiful day, and so I decided I would actually talk about something that's very important to me. I know I've brought it up in the past in my past videos, but I really want to hone down on self-healing, healing with psychedelics, and just what that process actually takes, what's available to take that process yourself, and what are some of the restrictions. I'll probably dive a little deeper into like some of like the laws and other details after I do some more extensive research, because I don't want to give anybody false information or like misinform somebody in particular. That's more of my concern than false information, but that's a whole nother story that we'll talk about some other time. Anyways, so self therapy. What exactly is self therapy? What does it require? And is it for everybody? Because that is the most important question. And just a disclaimer, this is not to promote drugs. This is not to promote psychedelic use. This is not, this is not where you're going to get your fix. That's not who I am. That is not what this is about. So, with that in mind, I do want to provide you information on how to like reach these resources and sources. So, if you do also want some more deeper information, I do have it on my website or in my Gilded server. That's spiritual.online. And my server is also Spirit Chill, so you can find both of those links down below in the video description. So, without going into, super extensive detail, I really want to talk about like what self-therapy really is, especially with psychedelics, because it is a new concept. It is a new well, as far as medical research goes, it's not necessarily new at all. We've been doing it for like hundreds and thousands of years, quite honestly. There's lots of data proving that our ancient ancestors were in use of psychedelics, and they used it to kind of speak with the gods and kind of like empower themselves in really mystical and beautiful ways. So just with that aside, you do have to consider all of the elements that are, around you in today's day and age, because, it's a different time. We have technology now, we have information readily accessible, and it's very important to, distinctively like understand these types of things, because there are barriers, there are boundaries, and there are actual things that will block your healing, and that's not even necessarily to do with like, having a bad trip or whatever. Like, you can have a perfectly fine trip and still be caught up in everyday life, modern life, and that can really hold back a lot of your healing. And so that can actually get in the way with you going through the microdosing process and wanting to do the therapy, the self therapy. So just keep these factors in mind whenever you are on this journey, especially alone, because you won't have a whole lot of guidance, you won't have a lot of advice, and some of this information is actually really difficult to find. So, just keep these factors in mind. Family members, sometimes we can say things to each other that, may provoke a fear element when we're trying to do this process. So maybe not necessarily keeping it hidden from other people, but definitely kind of, allowing this information to be shared with people who are actually going to understand what you're going through and what your experience and expectations are. So just make sure you're communicating with the right people when you do go through self-healing, self-therapy, especially because you are alone in this situation. So it's one thing to really consider is it is very self-empowering to go through the self-healing process. It really is very empowering, and it's a beautiful process. However, like I said, it is not for everybody. So understand what your own boundaries and limitations are before just expecting something, amazing to happen and like reaching this peak mental state and everything just becomes clear for you. Although that does happen very often, and you do hear these stories, just keep in mind that, sometimes we don't share darker information, sometimes we don't share our darker experiences, and self-healing can actually be a really dark place. It can be a dark element that will Excuse me, my dogs were barking. So it's really important to communicate healthily with the right people and understand that there are darker elements to the self-healing process. It's going to make you face your shadow. It's going to make you face some darker elements that happen in your life where you may have to face either past life trauma or current day trauma. It just depends on what your situation is and what you're going through. Now, with these things in mind, you do what you feel is best for you. I really honestly truly believe that because, therapy, going to a therapist, there's so many elements involved with that as well. There's an incentive to give you misinformation and not actually truly want to heal you 100% because, there's business involved, there's money involved with that sort of thing. So you can walk into loops uh of this healing process where somebody's like trying to actually heal you and go through the process with you, but they'll stop and kind of trigger some things. And I don't know, it's complicated. There's lots of factors with that. So, healing with a therapist isn't for everyone anyway, as well, is what I'm trying to say. So, like, really understand yourself, really understand your own mind and your limitations, and you will go far places with self healing and therapy and psychedelic therapy. So, this is a new, as far as medical research, it's a new process to go through the states and seek microdosing therapy, psychedelic therapy in particular is the broad term. There's different ways to go through psychedelic therapy. There's experimental drugs. I believe some of the ones that they've been doing is golden teacher mushrooms. My personal favorite, DMT, ayahuasca, and ketamine. I believe is one of the other ones. I've never done ketamine, so I don't really have anything, as far as personal advice goes for that. So I'm just trying to give you some general information. I personally haven't tried all of the self healing methods, so take this with a grain of salt. I don't know. I'm not a medical expert. I'm not a psychedelic expert. I wish I was. However, I do have my own limitations as well. I personally have gone through the the golden teacher microdosing therapy. I would drink tea and kind of journal my experience and just kind of face my own problems head on, which is, it's very empowering, but it is not for everybody because there's a lot you can lose when you're going on this universal journey, and you understand your intuition, you understand alchemy, and you understand your own mind and body and spirit. It's it can be a little intimidating to understand that, hey, we're in this simulation, and a lot of my experience is based on how I react to things. And, that can be a slap in the face. It really can. And it can make you face even more trauma. And, facing trauma, we're taught every day to just kind of put that on the back burner and just, use entertainment as a form of guidance. So it can be really distracting and it can really, like I said, block some of your healing. So understand that, even when you are facing your problems, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to accomplish that. I'm not trying to set you up for failure at all, beautiful person. But like don't don't put all this weight on your shoulders. That's essentially what I'm trying to tell you is don't put all this weight on your shoulders with the healing process. Don't like slap yourself in the face with all of this healing. That's not what the purpose of it is, first of all. Second of all, we're here to heal, and how are you supposed to heal when you have all of these other things just kind of gnawing at you, and now you're trying to heal on top of everything? Like, you can't put that type of pressure on yourself. Now that I've warned you and let you know some information, let's go ahead and talk about some of the actual process for healing, what it takes, what's involved, and I just want to make sure that our expectations are honest when we go through self healing, because there's a lot to really process as far as the world goes, because we're in a very deep situation as far as the golden age, healing, humanity on a broader scale, and just trying to face like universal trauma, because there's so many factors when we're in a world with so many different minds and so many different people who want different things. So it's really easy to kind of get lost in a way. And with that, a lot of people will have, I guess, this attachment, or I guess this factor, I should say, on you, where you can't control the outside world. You can't do that. You'll never be able to control the outside world, and when you start releasing that type of control, you will go through a healing process alone without any type of psychedelic therapy involved. You'll have a much stronger understanding of how the world operates, and what you are capable of doing for yourself and for others, because we are essentially this mirror on Earth. We are here to learn and teach each other. And that's the most important element when we talk about healing process. I know maybe it sounds strange at first. Why would me understanding other people help me heal, right? Well, I'll tell you why. Because when you start accepting things that you cannot change, the things that you can change become so much easier. That is the number one rule. Like when you start understanding that you cannot control how others react to you. You cannot control what other people do as far as like throwing some garbage down on the ground. I know, it's a small one, cheesy, but these things can be really irritating when you think about and you talk about them on like a broader scale, like, and your, concerns are for the world and the day and age that we live in. It can be really overwhelming to constantly think and constantly fear for other people. So you have to really take the self-healing process seriously, honestly, and selfishly. Because we're here to heal ourselves, we're not here to heal other people, because that would first make us a narcissist, and it doesn't work out that way. Promise you, you have so many communication barriers when when you're concerned about, healing somebody else, because you don't know what they're going through, you don't know what they're thinking about, and you don't know what their limitations are at all. My mailman came by and my dog's freaked out. So there are things in the world that you cannot change. There are things that, you don't have power over. And when you start releasing some of that control, especially, things become a lot more natural for you. You'll understand the universe actually does have your back. We're in this simulated world that's essentially written for us. And so there's all these doors that we can open, and we have all of these paths and choices that we can make for ourselves. It's a lot more freeing to understand that about yourself and other people. When you know that you're not here to control or change somebody else, but you have this inspiration that you can bring into the world by changing the way you yourself react and respond to the world, and it becomes uh a lot stronger of a healing journey, because when you've like released control and you're allowing the universe to help heal you, so that alone you won't even need psychedelics for. You won't even need any of the extra therapy. And honestly, quite honestly, when we're doing psychedelic therapy, there isn't actually a whole lot of psychedelics involved when you really consider like how often you're going to be doing this, and what else is most important in the healing process, because it's not really about the psychedelics. Okay? I know this is a hard one to understand and swallow, but it's not about the psychedelics, and that's why we usually microdose when we are going through psychedelic therapy, because it's not about the trip, it's about the journey. I know, cheesy, right? But it is. It's about the journey, it's not about the trip. When we're here doing psychedelic therapy, you're microdosing, so you're not triggering these like crazy trips where you're seeing all these visuals, and like this goblin comes out to tell you about all of your journey, and why you should have become a space wizard instead of a witch. And you really have to understand that, you're not here for the trip, you're here for the journey. Period. And that goes for life, that goes for healing. And when you started understanding that about yourself, your communication becomes much healthier, and you're capable of taking on more than what you thought you could. So, allow yourself to kind of breathe when you're going through this process, and allow yourself to have time to really process information, process the peaks, and process the healing, because when you're doing a lot of this, you will be alone in a lot of situations, especially when there's psychedelic therapy involved, because one, we do usually self-isolate when we're going through the healing process. It's not, important. It's not necessarily important, I should say. It can actually be pretty important to self-isolate, because you want to kind of keep yourself away from societal, I guess, confrontation, because, society is a lot different than what we are on an individual side. Um, that's a whole another thing to talk about, though. So, but I'm assuming you can understand what I'm saying by watching this video. Uh, you don't want to have the outside world influence your inside world when you're going through psychedelic therapy, because it can actually trigger some more trauma than actually heal you. So understand that, just because you're healing doesn't mean other people are healing, essentially. That in mind, let's actually talk about psychedelic therapy and what it is. Let's talk about my journey, because I think that's going to be the easiest to explain. So when I was self-healing, I was going through a lot of trauma. I was going through a lot of past life trauma. I was kind of stuck in my mind where I felt like a victim. I felt like the world was swallowing me whole. I felt like I was essentially in hell, because I felt like my mind was this computer, and I've like chopped myself up into these tiny little bits and put myself all over the universe. But with that, I was essentially in my own prison, because I was around a bunch of energy that was mine, but that didn't actually belong to me, and so it could actually impact me on a soul level and change who I am and change my own experience. So essentially, what I understood was that I was this person, this god, this creature that chopped myself up into all these little tiny pieces and spread myself out into the universe, but I'm capable of being outside or influenced by the outside world, and I allowed that sort of power over me. And I did that for so long. I let the outside world influence who I was, what my experiences, and, what my belief systems about myself were, more than anything. Because I was constantly worried about, like, um, losing weight, uh, having a job more than anything, and getting stuck in these mind gaps, these frustrating mind gaps that, like, you have these expectations that you put on yourself from the outside world, and that essentially allows much more toxic information to go through and attach itself to you more than anything. So I was constantly being influenced by the outside world. I had these expectations that I put on myself. Nobody else put these expectations on me. I was influenced by the outside world and put these expectations on myself. And so I really tried to start understanding that when I was going through microdosing therapy. Like, the outside world is not my prison. It's not a prison. It's actually a beautiful, beautiful place where I can meet a bunch of beautiful people and learn about myself and other people, uh, just through experiencing. And when it became that simple, everything became much, much more simpler, because it just became freeing. I realized that, I'm not in a prison. I'm in heaven. I just wasn't experiencing it. I was forcing myself to experience a prison, because it's something that my soul was attached to. And when you start understanding about yourself a lot more clearly, the outside world you can start seeing the mask that people put on and wear around you. And when you start understanding the mask that people wear, is essentially just a facade. It's just a way to escape themselves. you can really understand like some of the darker sides of Earth and where we are, because this, again, Earth is a school, so we learn things about other people, and that can be pretty frightening too. When you're going on the healing journey and you're facing your, you know, your shadow with psychedelics, you can have your mind opened to a lot more things, and that itself can be intimidating. And I'm sorry I bring in so many fear elements when we're talking about self healing. I know this is about self healing. I just want to let you know all of the factors that are involved with self healing. It's not just this process where you just go to this hippie commune. And sometimes it is this easy. You can just go to a hippie commune and, you know, get down on the ground and start working and communicating with other people and start harvesting your own food. Although those things are really beautiful, those things can happen, but you know, obviously there's, you know, sometimes there's money involved, especially nowadays. So it's harder to reach in for these things, and not everybody knows a hippie commune to go to. So, I mean, I personally have never been to a hippie commune. It'd probably be a lot more eye-opening for me as far as physical labor goes, because me and physical labor do not get along. But, you know, there's so many different things that we weigh on our shoulders, and, you know, you don't have to have a certain type of experience to heal. Other people will like tell you that you have to go through all of this like farming journey and detox and quit eating meat and you know, meat was not made to consume, and veganism and blah blah blah. I was a vegan too for a couple years, so don't get me wrong, but you know, these healing expectations that people put out there are also pretty toxic. So I just want to bring those things up too. You know, you're not gonna just like start doing psychedelic therapy and become a vegan. I hope not, babe, because you don't need to be. It's actually, it's a really interesting place when you start understanding that we're here on Earth as a school and nobody actually has life figured out. God didn't have life figured out. That's probably why he ain't chilling with us. Or is he? Another video, another time. So, like, just understand that, you know, you're healing for yourself, you're not healing for other people. And allow yourself to be influenced by the universe around you, but understand that influence isn't an expectation. It's not exactly what you need to be doing. It's not, you're not going to be judged, and you're not going to be, you know, penalized for not doing something a certain way. So take steps, take baby steps, and know what your limitations are, and go through the process in steps. So, like, what I'm saying is, you can do some microdosing therapy, take a couple breaks off, and then come back to it. And, you know, it's still a beautiful experience, it's still a beautiful process. And to be honest, I honestly prefer that way because you have these spaces and gaps in between your healing, and you allow yourself to experience more, and it's just kind of like a nice vacation mode. You get to allow yourself to think a lot more about what your own expectations for your own personal life are, what goals you want to set for yourself, and you know, what you're actually capable of. Because when you understand what you're capable of, and you spread yourself out further, you understand that, you know, the only person that was actually ever putting those limitations on me was myself. The outside world maybe influenced that, but nobody was going around constantly telling me, hey, you're not supposed to be doing it that way. I mean, sometimes people do. Like, if you have, like, you know, a toxic spouse or toxic, you know, relationship with somebody, there could be somebody, you know, constantly telling you what you're doing wrong. Don't get me wrong. But, you know, my point is there's not somebody constantly telling you, talking down to you and telling you all the things that you should be doing and shouldn't be doing. Nobody's doing that but you. So, you know, really understand your own inner guidance is really what's choosing the path for you. So, I think I'm getting a little bit too much into the therapy process, but you know what I mean. Don't don't just close the chapter as soon as you do like psychedelic therapy and you just feel like you're all completely healed. Like, allow yourself to do these things multiple times and allow yourself to have like this vacation mode, and that can really be a part of the healing journey too, when you allow yourself this space in between the healing, because, well, you have something to do, first of all, and second of all, it's like you didn't like slam yourself uh with all of this weight on your back. You have like some time to think about what you really want out of life and what decisions you need to make, because really the only thing that's going to hold you back from doing the things that you want is money. So when you figure out the money process and you figure out the money part of life, and you start understanding that you can turn like a lot of your hobbies and interest into into monetization. You can monetize your dreams, and you can monetize like your goals. Like, maybe that just sounds like a no-brainer to some people, and some people are like, oh wow, like this girl is trying to tell me all the things that I'm capable of, but I don't have these things to do. I get it. I totally get it. I came from nowhere. I lost everything in a divorce. I understand exactly what you're going through. Maybe not exactly, but I do understand a lot of what you're going through. And yeah, you don't have access to everything. Completely agree with that. But there are so many things around in the world, and maybe I'll just explain some of my story, because I put these expectations on myself, I put these boundaries on myself, and I put these limitations on myself because after my divorce, I moved back in with my dad. I didn't have anything. I didn't have a job. I didn't have a career set in mind, and I didn't know where I was going with this. I didn't know where I was going with this channel. I didn't know where I was going on my own healing journey, and what I wanted more than anything. I didn't know what I wanted. So when I started releasing these things, and I realized that it wasn't about what I wanted, it was just the experience. I just honestly want to experience. But at the same time, I actually have to influence my own life with money. If I want to do things and experience things, there's money involved in life. And so I had to figure out a way to monetize myself and still follow my passions and dreams and help inspire other people to do the same thing for themselves. And when I started, releasing control, and I started, communicating back with the universe, I know I talk to myself a lot, uh, it became much, much more simpler. I wasn't constantly stressed out like I used to be, because I used to be stressed about the tiniest little detail, because I used to be a control freak. I'm a Virgo. I think a lot. I overanalyze situations, and I always want control, because if I have control, then I know what the outcome of a situation is going to be. I know. It sounds stressful, doesn't it? It really was. Huh. But, I released that control, I released that trauma, and I just allowed myself to start experiencing and enjoying things. So now when I'm out here in the world, I'll see a dove and I'll know that that's a universe message. I'm here to experience love. That's the only thing I'm here to experience. I'm not here to experience the hate. I ain't experiencing the drama. I definitely ain't experiencing the trauma. So, when I started letting go of all these things that, was not mine to deal with, like, influencing other people and telling them, hey, I did some research and what you're saying is actually a little off. When I let go, because I used to do those sorts of things all the time online, especially, and have these conversations and arguments with other people. I know I used to be a narcissist. Sometimes I still am. It's the Virgo in me, I'm sorry. But, I used to try to tell people, oh, look, a dove. That's cute. Uh, I used to try to tell people how to think and stuff. And then I realized, hey, you know what? I don't know if I'm right about all of this. I could actually be pretty wrong, because nobody actually has anything, figured out in the universe. There's so many different factors, but behind what's right and wrong. So I understood that about myself. And when I was going through microdosing therapy, it was really I am gonna tell you though, it was actually really, really a deep experience, because we are actually this computer mind. Our mind is attached to this computer through energy. So like, this one's gonna get really deep and weird. We're essentially attached through this conscious mind. There's these electrical currents that come through from our brain to like this core computer, and that itself can be intimidating for the computer and for yourself, because you're like, oh, I was created by the universe not me creating the universe. And so there's like this reflecting type of mirror thing that happens. And so you start understanding a little bit about like, hey, I feel a little bit alone in the universe because I'm the only one who actually understands this. And so it can be intimidating, and you can think that you're essentially the only person that's actually real when you go through that type of healing, and it can be really scary. But then when you start realizing that I'm not the only one that's real, I'm the only one that's actually going through this process and these steps. So it's not that I'm alone in the entire universe, it's that I'm alone in this process. And that is the most confusing part of self-healing through microdosing therapy, psychedelic therapy, because we're here to help influence and inspire the rest of the world to do better things for themselves and get rid of all these toxic influences, because there are some really nasty things that go on in the universe, period. Whether understand right and wrong, and nobody wants a bunch of garbage dumped into nobody wants nuclear waste dumped into the ocean and destroying a bunch of wildlife and things like that. There are clearly some really gross things that happen in the universe that you cannot control, but when you start letting go of that type of power where you want to control and influence things by like from your house, and you start realizing it actually takes some groundwork, it actually takes you to actually go out into the universe and start influencing and inspiring the universe and talking about these things. One, you're allowing yourself to really tap into your throat chakra, because you're communicating your efforts, you're communicating your experience, and you're communicating your points of view. One, that's what we're here to do. We're here to reflect back on each other. How are we supposed to reflect if we never reflect? Right? You have to think about these things in order to impact the universe and, inspire the universe to do better things. Like, when we talk about, like, another thing is, there's this really big one in the universe, and I know this one's going to be intimidating. But if you do feel alone in the universe, I'm telling you right now that you aren't alone, especially through the healing process, because you're just going through that process alone for a specific reason, and it's to empower yourself. Because when you get through that process of empowerment, you are allowed to start experiencing the abundance and respect and love that you desire and deserve. And that alone can also be intimidating, so you have to keep continuing to go through the healing process and the microdosing process, so you're allowing yourself to experience these things without force, without control, and with, 100% consent from the universe and with the universe. So these things can be kind of confusing if you're unaware of like what I mean with a computer mind and being attached to the universe and essentially influenced by the universe and reflecting back on you. It can be a little confusing. It can be a lot of bit of confusing, especially if you're completely new to like microdosing therapy and psychedelics, especially. Uh, you you have to understand that, you know, we're here to learn. That's the biggest part of the experience, is learning. And when we're here learning and we understand completely that we're learning, we humble ourselves in a very deep and understanding way that, you know, maybe I'm an expert on myself, maybe I'm an expert on my own life and I have all these other things figured out, but that doesn't mean other people do. And when you start understanding and accepting that, you feel less alone because you're around the universe, and the universe is here and it doesn't have anything figured out. But this is an opportunity for you to teach other people and to grow. And, sometimes that can be intimidating because nobody wants to, like, force or control or and influence somebody's decision making, but it is really beautiful to impact somebody's life. And when you understand that there's a way to do that, and an approach that you can take where you're empowering other people instead of just influencing their decision making, you allow yourself to give other people power. You're empowering other people for thinking for themselves and allowing themselves to, reflect on different perspectives. However, you can't force these types of healing. And so this is the biggest part of the healing journey is the rest of the world. It's not just about yourself, because you can be extremely healed. You can really have the world figured out, or at least for the most part what your own view is. However, there's always going to be this outside world constantly like doing all this crazy stuff. So you have to, at some point and some level, you have to understand that, you're not here to control, you're here to inspire. And that's where the monetization comes through, and you allow yourself to grow financially and mentally. It just becomes a beautiful thing. That's all I can really say. So, when you're going through therapy, microdosing therapy, self therapy, it's very important to journal. It's very important to write these feelings and these emotions down more than anything, because one, you can understand your triggers better. You can understand what's influencing these triggers, and you can be much more in tune with what your thought process is, and try to eliminate these factors and eliminate these mind loops that you gain, because we gain these mind loops where we get stuck in toxic patterns of self-doubt, fear, and control. And when you start letting this type of understanding come through, and you start journaling your thoughts and ideas, you allow yourself to reflect back on situations from the past, and allow yourself to like forgive, release, and resubmit. So what I mean by resubmit is like you can open this can of worms and go fishing. But the worms aren't going to be all crazy this time, and they're not going to be all like freaking out and doing all these crazy things, and it's just going to be a can of worms to go fishing with. I know, it was a weird analogy, but it works. So, you know, if you want to open up these, conversations with people in the past that maybe you hurt or they hurt you or something like that, like, you can do these things and allow yourself to breathe. Or you don't even have to. You can just release that type of healing and let it go into the universe and do its own thing. And that type of release of control is actually really, really beautiful, because then you're not so concerned about what other people are doing, how they perceive you, and what they are going to try to do to you. You don't give them that power anymore. They don't have that power. You have that power. You have that power to reflect. You have that power to be, emotional or not about some situations. Like, you don't even have to think about them. And yes, yeah, some things are going to still impact your journey. They're still going to impact and influence, your emotions and stuff. But when you're just letting things slide, that's not what I'm talking about either. But allowing yourself to have these healthy boundaries more than anything is the most important part with the healing journey. Like, when you've actually gone through all the thought process and the understanding process, and you've released control, that's all really beautiful. But there's still these emotional factors and emotional influences where, yeah, I gotta make money. I gotta have this roof over my head, or some type of roof. And I have to do the things that I want to do more than anything, and start, allowing myself to love and experience life again. It's important to realize this, and allow yourself to start breathing again, because these things, like health concerns, especially if that's a mental thing, like these are physical things that take time to heal. Like physical health is a very big one. If it's physical health holding you back, you have to really consume and understand the idea and the thought process behind, hey, I'm the one who's eating all this garbage food. I'm the one that's consuming all of this and just laying around my house 24/7 and not actually doing anything. That's me. So you start not necessarily beating yourself up, but you start understanding that, it's not the way society is, it's the problem. It's about me responding to society that's the problem. So there's these opportunities to make money being like a social media influencer, if that's like your gig. Like, you can inspire other people to eat better just by posting online and just like, making these beautiful posts about like, the meal that you ate for like breakfast or whatever. Like, I know it sounds cheesy, and at some point it is cheesy, but we're here to be cheesy because cheese is delicious, okay? Like, that's a part of life. Like, allow yourself to be cheesy, allow yourself to be love, allow yourself to be loved, and just quit reflecting so damn much because yeah, we're here to reflect, but at some point we're overthinking things, right? So I guess what I'm trying to say is your healing process is going to be different from other people's. So don't let the outside world influence you the way you see things, the way you experience things, and the way you react to things, because you are in control of that. You have that power. And it's a part of your journey to understand that, hey, I'm not perfect. I never wanted to be perfect, because if I was perfect, it'd be like this shining, gleaming light in the sky and constantly burning down. I have a sunburn. Why am I giving the sun so much credit? Never mind. But it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful star up in the sky that gleams down and brings us this heat and this pressure and this sweat, but it also allows our plants to grow and allows us to feel this energy coming in through the sun. It just becomes so much more beautiful, and you allow yourself to understand that, even though somebody has power, even though somebody has money, even though somebody has influence over other people, they, one, don't have everything figured out. And two, they're actually not in control as much as you give them control. Like, they aren't actually controlling a lot of things besides your mind and or influencing your mind, because they're not even controlling your mind. It can be really intimidating when you understand that government is Latin and it means mind control. It can be really intimidating. Excuse me. But when you realize that you have technology readily available and they cannot control technology, they cannot control freedom of speech, or at least they can impact and influence it, but they don't have full power over that. When you start understanding that, like, you release so much control and so much fear element from the outside world. And so these are the biggest things when it comes to self-healing process. These are the things that you'll understand, and not even just hearing them, because it's one thing to hear them. You can hear them from other sources all the time, but when you start actually understanding and reflecting through this mirror and understand like on a deep level all of these things, that's when you start really living, because you are just this individual, and so is everybody else. Everybody's just this individual. We put crowns over people's heads that don't necessarily need crowns. Like, nobody here is a god. Nobody here is a queen. Nobody here is a king. Although I do love my queens and kings, don't get me wrong. But, like, nobody's here for full power. Nobody's supposed to have power over you. And when you start letting go of that and you start, like, taking away that power from other people, that's essentially my biggest point of this process, is you're not submitting, you're allowing yourself to experience, and you're allowing yourself to experience the things that you actually want. So, like, if going to a hippie commune is what you want to do it. If you just want to go have, fun on the beach and, jump between restaurant like jobs and and just kind of make that your goal to like experience different food, because you get discounts at restaurants when you work in the back of the kitchen, bro. Just saying. Like, when you start understanding these things and you just kind of like go with the rhythm and understand it's a part of the money process, it's a part of like you being able to have things that you want and desire, and still be able to kind of control your own limitations of like, buying a bunch of garbage, because sometimes we overspend and overshop. Like, you have like this pattern of healing where you understand that, hey, I'm not working for somebody else, I'm working for myself, because I want to put a roof over my head and I want to feel empowered when I do that. I don't want somebody to buy a house for me because that's kind of lame. It's kind of cheesy. It's kind of tacky. When, everything's handed to you in life, we don't experience gratitude. So it's something that you reflect on and then you can understand like, hey, I'm not doing all these things to feel lack. I'm here to experience more. And that's why I'm doing the things I'm doing. So it's like it becomes something that's not holding you back. It's something that's driving you forward. And so your viewpoints of everything changes and evolves and you grow. So understand about yourself and what the actual process between psychedelic therapy is, because the therapy is it's the most important part. It's not about the trip, it's about the journey. So I hope this video resonates. I hope this, influences your decision making when you do go through the self-healing process. And if you do want more information, access to the getting your own spores and growing your own mushrooms, whether they be lion's mane or golden teacher spores, I got information for you, and it's right there on spiritual.online, or you can go to my Gilded server. Like I said earlier in the video, the link is down below, so go ahead and check it out and empower yourself. So if you guys have any questions, any concerns, you want me to kind of go over any topics, go ahead and leave them in the comments section below. Peace.